So today I'd like to try something a little risky with the intention of offering you as much value as possible. My intention for this meeting is to be of service to that which offers me life, which provides me with guidance and which is ultimately the same intelligence which is within you. And so I'm here because I am saying yes to that which is prompting me to do so. And uh, I trust that you are here because that same intelligence has guided you to be here, to help to express something to you in a way that will connect for you, that will be meaningful and positively transformative in your life, that can help you to experience more fulfillment, more clarity, more peace of mind, more self-awareness. So that that is my intention. It's always my intention. I just want to make that explicit so that that's clear to you. Uh, I'm what it is that I'd like to share with you today. I say it's a little bit risky. I suppose it's always a little bit risky. The reason I perceive it's a little risky today is because on several accounts. One is that what I'd like to share with you today is quite subtle, and I think that when things are subtle, uh, there's a greater risk of misunderstanding. But it's a risk that I think is worth taking because what I'd like to share with you, I think, is something that can be uh, that can support you in all areas of your life and in all ways and at all times. It's something that can serve you even in times when nothing else seems to be available. And I know that from my own experience, which is the only thing that I can really speak from. That's really what it is that I uh, share from, at least when I'm at my best. And I really believe that that's what's most valuable. And so this is something that I have definitely found that is accessible even in those times when nothing else is, even in times when uh, even breath awareness may not be accessible. What I'm wanting to share with you today is available and can be very uh, supportive, empowering, uh, encouraging. And so this can help you also in the rest of the moments, even when other things are available and accessible to you. And it can help you as I said, in all areas of your life. So if you're primarily interested in manifesting certain material outcomes in your life, then this can help you with that. If you're primarily interested in uh, releasing old habits of suffering, then this can help you with that. If you're primarily interested in knowing yourself, this can help you with that. If you're primarily interested in what you think of as spiritual growth, this can help you with that. If you're primarily interested in improving the quality of relationships that you have, this can help you with that. Uh, Part of the risk of it, though, is that it doesn't, it's not so likely to deliver to you what you think you want so much as what you truly want. And oftentimes, uh, at least I don't know about you, I know about me, and I find, and I suspect you might find too, just from talking with lots of people, I think this is probably a common thing. You might find that you are uh, somewhat attached to what you think you want. You might not even be so aware of the attachment that you have to what you think you want until you're kind of, but your back is up against the wall and you might feel some fear of not having what you think you want. But what I'm going to share with you today, as I said, it's not really so much about what you think you want as it is about what you really want. So if you're going into this thinking that it's necessarily going to be a smooth, linear process where you're going to just feel better and know that you're feeling better, recognize that you're feeling better, uh, you might be disappointed in that. But if you really come to this with uh, a really open mind and an open heart and a willingness to uh, know something truer and greater than what you believe you have known up to now, then I believe that this, what I'm going to share with you today, can serve you in that. So this is for people who have a certain level of maturity, which I suppose really mostly is true of everything that I share, but in particular, I would say that this is true here. And so I guess fair warning. I mean, nobody who doesn't have a certain level of maturity would have stuck around this far anyway. But I've made it explicit. There's fair warning that what I'm going to share with you is for people who have a maturity that comes from having enough. Well, the maturity could come in through many different ways, but I think probably many of us come to that maturity, and certainly I have come to that maturity somewhat kicking and screaming, um, out of disappointment, discouragement, pain, frustration. So repeatedly n not experiencing what I think I want has resulted in the small amount of maturity that I have. And um, not that disappointment, discouragement, and so forth, it necessarily always delivers maturity, because certainly we can rail against it and just reinforce immaturity, but there can be, for some of us, a moment in which there's a recognition that the way that I've been attempting to live my life hasn't worked, and and that intelligence is there to remind us. And if we're really blessed and willing to listen to that in that moment, then what we recognize is if there if there is a way, it's a different way than how I've approached it. And I really don't want to continue to cause myself the harm and pain that I've been causing myself by metaphorically, hopefully just metaphorically, beating my head against the wall, trying to force something that's not working. Of course, the reason why many of us, myself at least, try to have tried or do try to force things that don't work is because that's the only thing that we know. That's the only thing that's available to us through the society that we have lived in. It's what was the only thing that our parents knew and our grandparents knew and our teachers knew and our friends knew and our religious leaders and so forth. It's just what everybody knew. They didn't know anything better. And so we thought that was all there was. And even for many of us, when we begin to expand our uh, minds a bit, and we think that we're on this exciting journey of maybe spirituality or self-help or self-actualization or so many different phrases that people might use for the same basic idea, which is there's a longing for something greater. And so we read books and listen to podcasts and watch videos and attend workshops and do all of these various things in an attempt to achieve this aim of something greater. And what we usually don't realize until maybe we do is that we've taken the same limitations, the same basic uh, worldview, and we dressed it up as this new exciting thing. And so we really thought, oh, this is different. This is new. I'm on this new exciting path. Something great is going to happen from this. And it may come to a point where possibly through, as I said, disappointment, frustration, pain, there's a realization, as I've said, that, oh, I've just been fundamentally doing the same thing, really fundamentally taking the same approach. And then, as I said, if we're fortunate, then there's this intelligence which is present. It's always present, but it tends to speak to us in such a gentle way or a quiet way or a subtle way that we have to be in the right state uh, of relative quiet or openness or receptivity to be able to actually hear it. And in that moment, we might hear it say to us, in effect, there's another way. The old way just doesn't work. So uh, that that new way that I'd like to share with you, and I think many of you will recognize this isn't really fundamentally different than much of what I share, but it's, as I say, it's more subtle. And some of you will have read the uh, essay that I published on Substack over the weekend, which is on the same subject. So there may be some familiarity in for those of you who read that. So the new way is a way of feeling. And uh, feeling, I think I've found personally is something that is we're trained by society to try to avoid or suppress. And we might not think that that's the case because we might say, well, I'm feeling a lot. I mean, I certainly have always perceived them very sensitive. So I've always, if you would have asked me, am I feeling? I would have said, yes, I'm feeling a lot. I'm feeling a lot of pain. I'm feeling a lot of frustration. I'm feeling a lot of these things. I'm feeling a lot. But there's a subtle but important distinction between the genuine, direct, raw feeling as an activity, as a process, as a living present reality. There's a distinction between that and the suppressed uh, feeling light that is uh, has the stamp of approval of society, which is filtered through the mind, it's filtered through the thinking apparatus. And so we're conditioned, many of us, to think about feeling rather than just to feel. Because for many of us, feeling is a seems very dangerous, seems very threatening. It's we didn't have a context in which we had the support to actually feel, because I think that, as I said, society teaches us to suppress it. I think society on the whole is very much filtered through the thinking apparatus and very much has suppressed feeling. So we're not even accessing. It's there's a mix up. Sorry, I gotta somebody was unmuted. I'm gonna just I thought I had there's a setting somewhere where I can unfortunately Zoom has here we go. Zoom changed everything around, so all the settings that used to be easy to find are now difficult to find. Um, so the there's a mixing up of functions, and as a result, we're kind of uh, only accessing a small amount of our real power because we're not utilizing all of the functions that are available to us. And feeling is a very important function. This is what I found. Feeling is what allows for uh, the actual energetic meeting and processing of whatever it is that is happening. And when that function is suppressed, then what happens is that we get a backlog of stuff, of feeling, of energy, of emotion that is sort of like this, like energetic constipation. So, you know, you might not feel all that well as a result. Uh, and it just has this compounding effect where it's then also numbs the whole apparatus and making it even more difficult to actually uh, tune into and access that function of feeling. So, uh, so that's the introduction. Uh, and so just to recap that part, the habit of suppression of feeling, which I'm proposing is the norm for society. It's what society has taught us. It's what society modeled for us. Uh, is preventing prevents us from accessing our full power. Certainly, is preventing us from utilizing all of our faculties, and therefore creates this backlog of unprocessed energetic stuff, which takes its toll on us and interferes with us having the quality of experience that we would like. So this connects up with all areas of our life. That's why I said uh, cultivating a capacity for genuine feeling can benefit all areas of your life. So when it comes to manifesting material outcomes, it's an energetic thing. Everything is energy. So if there are particular things that you want to manifest materially, whether that's money or uh, any material things, you know, career, eh, whatever it might be, th that's an energetic thing, and you cannot direct your attention to in a sustained way to maintain the feeding of whatever it is you want energetically when you've got this backlog of unprocessed energetic stuff that is constantly just pulling at you, and you don't know what to do with it, and so it creates this distress. Um, and so learning how to directly process that or unlock that faculty gives you the ability to release, to process through, to release all of that backlog of stuff. And therefore, you're freed up to be able to direct energy toward what you want. So you'll have an easier time manifesting those material things that you want. The same fundamentally applies to all anything else. So if it's relationships, if it's your health, if it's um, spiritual growth, whatever it is that you're wanting, you're going to have an easier time with that when you're not struggling with this backlog of energetic stuff. So why should you listen to me? Um, I don't really suppose that you should listen to me, but uh, here's what I want to try to be as transparent with you as I can so that you can determine for yourself if what I'm sharing actually is something that makes sense for you. So I came to discover what I'm sharing with you about feeling through my own uh, trials and tribulations. And I won't go into detail about all of it. I mean, I do tell that story an awful lot, and I get a bit fatigued with it. But I'll touch upon a few points just because if you've never heard the story before, I think it can be helpful. Uh, I I learned, as I'm proposing many of us do, to suppress the feeling function at an early age. I can't tell you that there was some crystallizing moment that I can recall, but I do know that I I didn't I recall many things from my childhood where I had very strong feeling, but I didn't have any support for how to allow that or be with that or actually experience that. And I felt that I was punished or isolated or threatened with isolation particularly when I was feeling, particularly when I was emoting. So feeling does not require emoting necessarily, but Oftentimes they go together, and when I would emote very strongly, especially if it was angry emoting, um, then I would be punished or isolated. And so I learned through that a strategy of suppression. It was what my family modeled for me, was what my teachers modeled for me. And I was rewarded for that. Not in particularly meaningful ways, really, but enough that it worked. You know, I was rewarded with not being punished. I was rewarded with getting good grades. I was rewarded with um, being allowed to do certain activities that I use television a lot for self-soothing. So if I wasn't punished, then I was in a better position to be able to watch more television. So I learned that suppressing my emotions was a way that I could get those kinds of rewards. And so I was trained to do that. And that just became so normalized that after many years, I didn't even know that there was a possibility of actually feeling, because I had thought that feeling was what I was doing, which was thinking. I was thinking about it. I would fantasize about how I would get revenge. I would fantasize about how I would show people how wrong they were. I would fantasize about how I would um, make people sorry. You know, they would, and it all stayed in fantasy because I had to suppress in order to not be punished. But I could think about it in this way. I could fantasize. Oh, they'll be really sorry when they see how much I've been hurt. They'll be really sorry when they see, you know, that when I'm dead. They'll be really sorry when whatever. I could fantasize about these things. I could fantasize about uh, whatever I wanted. That was free. So I could think about these things. I could plan how I would redeem myself or prove that I was good or right or righteous. So thinking became the dominant function over feeling. Uh, Now, was there still sensation? Of course, there was sensation, often very unpleasant sensation, which in my case, the dominant experience or expression of that would be what I would call anxiety. Anxiety is a fundamentally meaningless term, but that's what I would have called it. And it was characterized by uh, a sense of shakiness, inner shakiness, sometimes outer shakiness, uh, feeling of being trapped or stuck, an urgency to solve this desperate problem. Um, and so, and of course, I would spin in thought, which would just increase the intensity of the whole thing. That wasn't the only experience, but it was the dominant one. And I got really, really good at that. I got so good at that that it nearly resulted in my dying from that, because I really pushed myself too far to the brink in regard to that. And but it took many years, so that took about 34 years before I got to that point. But it was there at that point where I was, as far as I could tell, I was on the brink of death, because I had pushed myself so far that there's kind of a bell-shaped curve, I guess, where that suppression of feeling and then the kind of high intensity, in my case, anxiety, although for other people it might not be anxiety, it might be something else, but it can kind of catalyze this performance. So I was a very good performer. I was very, very driven. And so I achieved a lot. So I kind of peaked at around age 27, 28. Um, and then it was it was kind of downhill from there. And by the time I was 34, I had pretty much completely crashed. So when I was like 27, around that age, I was making ridiculous amounts of money. I was in demand in my career. I could name write my own ticket, basically. I had achieved a lot, but then around age 34, I had pretty much blown through all the money. My body was basically not functioning. And I saw no way out. Everything that I had tried didn't work ultimately. Actually, everything that I had tried, because I was trying it still in the same mindset and still from the same fundamental worldview, still from the thinking function, actually fed into the same problem. Things that for other people and under other circumstances might be helpful, things like yoga, prayer, fasting, these things for the right people in the right circumstances sometimes might be helpful. For me, they were just adding fuel to the fire. And so when I got to that lowest point, I was completely out of ideas. I had exhausted everything that I knew to do. And that, as I said earlier, for me, that was a blessing in that it allowed just a moment of receptivity, a moment of relative silence, a moment of humility where, and it's really brief, I mean, because I'm not far from the world's most humble person, but there was just enough of a moment where I was able to hear that that intelligence, and it said, and it wasn't in these words, but it was, the old way won't work. There's another way. And so this new way began to reveal itself. In my case, no surprise, still through me doing a lot. I was still, even though I was on death's doorstep, I still was at that point. I discovered tapping, EFT, and I credit that as a vehicle that helped me to start to make that shift to feeling. But it was still through a process of doing. There was still an awful lot of activity. It gets exhausting when doing that for hours a day. And so I was still doing a lot, striving, trying to get it right, trying to be good, the same old programming running. But but there but this there was enough humility and receptivity that this new way was revealing itself. So even though I didn't know a better way at that time other than to use this process and, tapping, even though I think I'm a piece of shit, I still completely love and accept myself. That was a lot of that was a lot of it. It's like, even though I see no possibility of any healing whatsoever at any time in my life, and it seems like a complete dead end, I completely love and accept myself. So in through that, there was this softening that started to take place. Now, I didn't even know that I was so hardened. In retrospect, it's completely obvious, but I didn't know that. I really didn't know. because in order to recognize that, I think there has to be some awakening of the feeling function. And I had suppressed that so much that I couldn't actually genuinely have that recognition of how hardened I was. I knew I was in pain. Intellectually, I could have probably acknowledged that, sure, I guess, yeah, I'm pretty tense. Maybe that's the hardness. But the genuine recognition of that hardness at a subtler energetic level, I couldn't have done it at that time. So this process of this softening started to allow me to connect to that feeling function. And then I started to recognize how hardened I had been and I and how hardened I still was. So it wasn't like I was this, ice cube and I melted or, became steam or something like that. I mean, I was still frozen block of ice, but just a little tiny bit softer. And that is when my life changed. Now, that's a little too simplistic, as any story will be. And so the danger is that you might read too much into that. Um, so on the one hand, it's true. Yes, definitely my life did begin to change then. Was that the only time and the only way in which my life ever changed? No. Um, but it was a significant shift. And it's been ongoing. So I'm not somebody who speaks from an ivory tower. I'm not I'm not level 27 enlightened. It's just a little joke that I have about level 27 enlightenment, but you maybe get the idea. I'm not I'm not speaking to you from some pedestal or some high place. I'm definitely not a guru. I'm not a teacher. Uh I'm not even sure that I'm a guide, although I've there's some element of that there, in as much as I can I can show what it is. I can guide you through the territory that I myself have uh, familiarity with. So there is some element of that, but that's not even exactly quite right. Um, I'm someone who is willing to be a mouthpiece for that intelligence which is in and through and as all that is. Uh, and I'm just speaking in that sense from self to self. I'm just offering whatever it is that is arising that wants to be expressed and trusting that whoever can receive that and benefit from that will receive it and benefit from it. And by virtue of the fact that you're here, then I assume that you are one of those people. So, so this feeling is a very soft thing. It requires so much softness And yet, society trains us to harden, to be guarded, to be tough. And even if you are not someone who thinks of yourself as being tough or guarded or hardened, and I don't know you, so I don't know what your experience is, but by virtue of the fact that you're here, I assume that what I'm sharing is for you. And therefore, I invite you to have an open mind and genuinely be curious about how might it be true that you might be hardened. Maybe not the hardest, maybe not the most guarded, but might there be some opportunity for some greater softness? And might, it really might even be subtle. Sometimes very subtle, small changes can have very significant results. So don't even necessarily look for any big dramatic anything. But right now, just notice, can you notice any room for softening of any kind? If you notice that you are looking to your thoughts for how to answer that question, then look closer, more subtly. It's before the thoughts. The thoughts are coming after the fact, trying to explain it, trying to understand it, trying to rationalize some kind of action or response. But before that, just notice any possibility of any softness, any greater softening. And if you find that, then you've connected more to feeling. And if there are thoughts that then come of any kind, could be any thoughts, could be thoughts about, am I doing it right? Or it could be thoughts about, this is stupid, this isn't for me. Or it could be thoughts about, what am I going to do next? Or it could be thoughts about, is this really going to help me? Or it could be thoughts about how you're going to, scheming for how you're going to get more money or whatever's going on in your life. And so if you notice any thoughts, then just notice what effect that giving attention to those thoughts has in regard to this softness. What I find is that there's a remarkable connection. When I'm focused on the thoughts, when I'm giving my attention and energy to the thoughts, then there's less softness. I don't know exactly why that is. I could speculate. It seems like the thoughts are usually based on fear. So based on some sense of lack, some problem, something, some threat, something that needs to be fixed. And so there's probably this reflexive tension, this hardening that takes place. I don't know if that's it, but that seems to be the case. It doesn't really matter why, but that's what I've noticed. It seems as though giving attention to the thoughts brings about more hardness, less softness. So I'm not here to say that thinking is bad. Um, I'm not here to say that hardness is always bad. Softness is always good. It's just an invitation to notice for yourself when might softness and feeling actually serve you best, and when might the hardness and the thinking actually work against you. And you can't figure that out through thinking about it, even though that's probably what most of us would initially attempt to do, but it doesn't work, at least not in my experience. So another option is to just observe directly by just noticing the possibility of softening and just notice what happens. You know, what often happens for me is, and you may be different than me in this regard, but what I notice is what the kinds of thoughts that are particularly seductive for me are the thoughts about, well, I really need to do something uh very uh specific. I need to have a plan. I need to take some action in order to resolve my problem. I'm pretty convinced most of the time that I've got some kind of problem. I have no actual evidence that that's true, that I have a problem, but I sure can invent an awful lot of it. So that's, for me, that's the habit. It's still, even after all these years, to to go back to that default assumption. There must be a problem. We need to solve the problem. You know, I can't afford to feel. I can't afford to be soft. I mean, that'd be nice and all, but I've got to take some action. Can't take action while I'm feeling and being soft. I don't know that that's true, by the way, but that's what the thoughts say. The thoughts say, you know, leave that feeling and softness for later once you solve the problem. And that's why I said, for this, what I'm sharing today to really be something that you can really receive and meaningfully work with requires a level of maturity, because you have to be at a point in your life where you can actually recognize that the way that you've been trying to solve your problems is not working. I mean, isn't that true? And some of the problems that you've solved, they're already solved. So I'm not saying you can't ever solve any problem at any level by thinking. I mean, that would just be a foolish comment, because obviously some problems at some levels can be solved through thinking, not thinking alone, thinking in action. But that's not that's not those aren't troubling you. Obviously, you've already solved those. It's the problems, or the so-called problems, that you haven't solved through the old way. It's the and specifically the problems that you've been struggling with for months, years, decades, maybe your whole life. And if by now, after all this time and all this effort and all this thinking, and all these actions, all the YouTube videos, all the different courses and books and all the things, you know, all the stuff you got from the TikTok experts. all this stuff. If it hasn't worked, maybe that's not the way. And like I said, it requires maturity because you got to be the sort of person who's beat your head against the wall. I mean, maybe not. Maybe you didn't come to it through that way, but for many of us, it will be that, right? For many of us, certainly it was for me. Beat my head against the wall, beat my head against the wall. Again, metaphorically, hopefully not literally, but it's over and over and over and over and over until finally it's not working. It's not working. It's not going to work. I wasn't going to stop until I had the realization it's not going to work. As long as I thought, well, I just haven't tried hard enough, just haven't tried long enough, just didn't try the right combination. Yeah, I just didn't try it in this particular way. I didn't try it with my fingers crossed. I didn't try it on a Saturday. I didn't try it with, my lucky sneakers on. I didn't try it. Oh my goodness, it's like, oh, finally. Oh, it's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. So if you've gotten to that with whatever it is, again, it does not have to be everything in your life. If you got a tax problem, go to the tax professional. That's probably going to help you. But if you've if you've got a problem that you have not, it just keeps rearing its head and you've never been able to solve it no matter what you've done. And if it's never occurred to you before, you might consider the possibility the way that you've been approaching it hasn't worked. Maybe it won't work. And if that has already occurred to you, then what all I'm inviting you to here is to listen within yourself. Again, I'm just a mouthpiece. I'm just giving words to something that you can then connect within yourself. If it connects, then this can change your life. If it doesn't connect, leave it. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's not for you right now. Because it has to be something that you can connect within yourself. If this is just something that you say, oh, well, Joey said, eh, forget about it. Because then you're right back to this, it's like you got that, just another thing that you got from somebody else. You've got no shortage of that. And that just feeds the same desperation, right? I mean, haven't you been through that before? You find the new person on YouTube or Instagram or wherever, whatever you do, you find them and you're like, oh, this is the one. This makes sense. They're going to save me. They've got the answers. I'm going to follow their system. Oh, hallelujah. Their course is only nine 99 and I can afford it if I put it on credit. Fingers crossed it will work because it better. And I don't want to lead you in that way. I don't want to lead anybody anywhere other than to yourself. I can I'm not discounting the value of what I offer. I I can provide a valuable service, but ultimately, I'm when I'm really truthful, I'm always just pointing you to yourself. That's the only really truthful, really valuable thing. And so maybe that is something that for some people that happens, like that. You show up to this meeting, or you listen to this on YouTube and it clicks. Maybe it just clicks and it's like, holy cow, I had no idea, but it's here. everything that I'm looking for is already here, and I just trust in this. If I just connect with this, allow this, just feel, just soften. That's it. Then bless you. I'm so happy to have been able to serve you in that way, and that's all that's needed. And for some people, and I'll be honest about it, for this would be the majority. I mean, that's a very small minority who's just going to hear it once and it's going to click. For the majority, it requires a lot of repetition, a lot of pointing, a lot of, you know, you go off in a kind of weird direction with something, and then you need a reminder. So, uh, again, I'm not discounting the value of the the service that I offer, both through these meetings or in group coaching or one-on-one coaching or however that might be offered. But it's not, but I just really want to be clear that I'm not selling a system. I'm not trying to provide some external fix or mechanism. I don't want to give you something that you become dependent on. I'm only really interested in pointing you repeatedly to discover that within yourself, which can guide you truthfully, which is always available, which is dependable, reliable. If you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're panicking or whatever is happening, then this is here for you. You don't need to go to the next meeting or read the next book or any of that. It's always here. That's the most valuable, most important thing. And it will never fail you. It will never guide you wrong. It will never leave you. So your job, as it were, if this makes sense to you, if this is, connecting for you, then I mean, then your job, if you won't want to understand it that way, I don't like that word, so I see if I come up with something better. But until I do, I'll say your job is to allow it, trust it, and it is expressing in through all of your faculties, including through feeling. And in order to access that, it's necessary to soften, because as long as you're hardened, guarded, then you're shutting it down, and it can't help you then, because you always have that free will. If you're using your free will, albeit unconsciously, but nonetheless, to suppress, then nothing can be done about that. I mean, something can be done, and that's what's happening here. I mean, this is like this is a intervention where that intelligence is coming through and it's speaking to you and reminding you, I'm here. Soften and feel. Then you will know and trust in this. So it's really that simple. And like so many simple things, due to its simplicity, many of us have a hard time with it because we are habituated to overcomplicating things as an avoidance strategy. So a couple more notes on this, and then I'll wrap up this portion. So the as you are allowing yourself to soften and feel, it's possible that you might experience uh, many, many different things. So some of what you might experience, you might consider to be very positive. You might feel more at ease, more relaxed, open, trusting, safe, whole, supported. And it's also possible that you could experience, at times, maybe a sense of discomfort or overwhelm because uh, of a lot of factors, what, not the least of which is that what is unfamiliar to us, often our nervous system will perceive as a threat and therefore produce some kind of discomfort. And certainly, if you are like me, and I would venture most modern people, uh, this feeling function has been so long suppressed that it, that it's very likely to be something that your nervous system will perceive in a as a threat. Not necessarily always, and maybe not ever for you, but for many of us, I'm just pointing out that you may at times experience some level of discomfort. And I, my recommendation, because it's what I've found to be helpful, and your mileage may vary, so feel free to do whatever you are intuitively guided to do. But I'm going to share what I have found very important and useful in my own experiences. Don't push into discomfort. Don't, I would not recommend uh, this popular idea of no pain, no gain, or you just gotta push through to the other side or something, because that's a very aggressive approach, which has a tendency to produce reflexive hardness, guarding. So it tends to be quite counter to what is actually wanted and needed in this case. So some minor level of discomfort is okay. This is my experience. In fact, it's almost inevitable. So I don't see any, I don't find there's any problem with minor discomfort. No, that's a very subjective idea, minor versus major. I mean, I can't give you a objective measurement there, but you have to be the judge. But just notice, um, is there actually any benefit in allowing that to become greater discomfort or trying to push through that or power through it or anything? I don't think there is. As I said, I think that what it does is it creates a reflexive hardness, and so I think it actually is counterproductive. What I think is much more useful, and personally what I have found to be much more useful, is to be as gentle as possible to and to allow for an acclimation. So if I experience some level of discomfort, then I just bring some curiosity to that. I don't try to push in any way. I just bring curiosity. So what is this? What is this? What I'm perceiving as discomfort? What is it actually? And not to think about it, but to actually directly notice, be curious about it. And if that seems to intensify the discomfort, or if the discomfort just has gone from 0 to 100 really fast, and there doesn't seem to be a way to pull that back, then what I found useful is to just uh, shift attention, just distract. I have not personally found any benefit in just trying to endure. I mean, sometimes there's a value in endurance because sometimes there doesn't seem to be any other option. But if there is another option, uh, I've I've generally for myself found that just taking a brief time out, a reset is helpful, and then to come back to it. So not as an avoidance strategy, but just as an intelligent approach to how to actually skillfully uh, develop this familiarity with the feeling function so as not to overwhelm myself. I just don't find any value in overwhelming. So I just have found just take a little reset, go for a walk, listen to a song. Maybe I'm hungry. Maybe I need to eat something. Maybe I'm tired. I need to take a nap. Just offer that gentleness, patience, care, love, and and then come back to it. It's an ongoing process. I have not arrived at some final destination. Like I said, I'm not speaking to you from an ivory tower or anything like that. It's and what I have found is that it personally, and your experience may vary, but what I've found is that it tends to happen in layers. Uh, so if you find that something similar in your own experience, then don't be distressed about it. Um, and so what I mean by layers is sometimes it will seem as though I've gone through a layer. I've gotten to another level of skill or familiarity with feeling and with all of the benefits that that offers. And then for me, arrogance will kick in, and I'll think, "Oh, I've arrived. Now I've got it. Look at me." And and that may last for a minute or a day or a week or a year, 5 years. I've gotten some good runs out of some of those, but but then something, the next layer will reveal itself, and it will sometimes feel as though, oh no, I've regressed, or I I didn't learn anything, or I've lost it all, or uh, something like that. But there doesn't seem to be anything to do about it other than just to feel. And through that, what is revealed thus far in my experience is that it's another layer. So uh, I didn't lose anything. I didn't regress. It's none of that. It was just, there was more growth that was possible that I hadn't known about. So I see it, even though sometimes in the moment, I've experienced some of these things as I perceive them as unpleasant, uncomfortable. In the bigger picture, I perceive all of it as being extraordinarily uh, helpful. Been a real blessing. It's a healing. It has helped me in so many ways, continues to help me. And so I believe genuinely that it can offer you all that and more. And that is what I wanted to say about that topic. So, for those who are here live, if you have questions, I'm happy to take those in the chat. And then once I've addressed all the questions, then we'll wrap up for today. And while I'm waiting, in case you have any questions, if you don't, that's absolutely fine. But in case you do, while I'm waiting for you to put those in the chat, I'll also mention for people who watch this on YouTube, if you're not, uh, if you're wanting um, a complimentary uh, lesson and something that can be maybe even a little bit simpler or more approachable than what I've shared today, then you will probably find the self-awareness course that I have available for free on my website to be useful. So I recommend that you check that out. And that is at joeylott.com/SA, the letter S for self, the letter A for awareness. And I'll put that link in the description on YouTube. Um, when you sign up for that, you'll also receive you'll be on my email list where I send out daily emails with what I believe is valuable content, valuable stories and reminders. So it's also the way to know about other offerings that I have. If you're wanting to know about ways that you could work with me, um, that would be the way to do it. So thus far, no questions. So I suppose that I've absolutely aced this one, and everybody has got it. I see you're typing. One person is typing a very lengthy question. So somebody says, I do notice that when I feel what's underneath the thought, the feeling is where I found everything is I suppressed. Just finding that for now is a big find. Yes, good. I'm glad that you, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that you've noticed that. Yeah, it's all there. It's no matter what other tools and things we might use, some of which can be useful. Like I said, I I used EFT at first, and that was very helpful for me. And I obviously share other tools and techniques that I believe can be helpful and supportive. But ultimately, uh, they all lead to this. And if you stay just with the tool or the technique and don't allow yourself to go to what it's pointing to, then you just end up chasing, kind of spinning around the periphery rather than going to the heart. And so then you just chase after, oh, I need another tool. I need another tool. I need a different one because that one didn't give me everything. But if you allow any useful tool, uh, it will take you there. And then it's just a matter of really listening, feeling. So we've got one here that says, I keep getting overwhelmed and have no direction in life. I find it all very difficult and confusing. I keep having TMS-like symptoms and anxieties. I know I have a very conflicted inner world and am having a hard time accepting how that gets mirrored back to me by my outer world. I'm thinking of becoming a monk and leaving it all behind to give it a relaxed container, example, a monastery, to be resolved and done with life. Do you think that's a good idea or realistic at all? Or do you think I'll stagnate there and nothing will be triggered? Or is it possible that those things will still come up, but then in an environment where it's more tolerable for me? Well, uh, I think the question there would be, do you do you actually have a genuine independent desire to live as a monk? Is that actually something that you have a real longing for? Or is this just a reaction? Because if it's a reaction, it's what you're just trying to get away from something. And in that case, uh, I I don't recommend it. If you genuinely have an independent longing and desire to live as a monk, completely independent of the pain and discomfort that you experience in your life, but if you were already completely happy and satisfied and at peace, you would still just have this deep longing to live as a monk, then I would say, well, then there you have your answer. Uh, but most of the time in these cases, it's very rare that a person has genuine longing to live as a monk. It happens, but it's quite rare. Um, so if that's not the case for you, that you genuinely want to live as a monk, then uh, I wouldn't recommend it. And also, um, the idea that somehow that's going to be a relaxed container, as you say, mm, may not. It's possible that it's true, but it may not be true, um, because as they say, wherever you go, there you are. It's certainly been my experience. So if you, it's like that story, the story, I've told this story before. It's not, I didn't make up the story, but it's like the travelers, tra this man is traveling and he comes to a city and he approaches the gates of the city and there's a guard at the gate of the city and the traveler says, I'm thinking, I'm thinking, I'm looking for a new place to settle down, and I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the people who live in this city. And the guard says, "Well, tell me a little bit about the people in the place where you came from." The guy says, "Oh, they were just terrible, awful. They were liars and cruel." And the guard says, "Well, and it's the kind of people you're going to find here too." So the traveler says, "Oh, shucks." He walks along in search of the next city. Then along comes another traveler, and the traveler comes and approaches the city gates, and he says to the guard, I'm thinking about settling down somewhere new, and wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the people in the city." And the guard says, "Well, tell me about the people in the place that you came from." And the second traveler says, "Oh, they were just the most wonderful people. They're so generous and kind and loving and compassionate and caring." And the guide says, "Yeah, I think that's the kind of people you'll find here." So, you, 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 you bring with you what your dramas. Uh, Somebody says, "Is the Substack you stated healing is feeling?" Just to clarify, is this about feeling the raw sensation without putting a label on it? I don't know what I titled it. I might have titled it that. Did I title it that? I thought I'd give it a different name. It was the one I published over the weekend. I might have published two over the weekend, but it was the most recent one. Um, and yes, I wouldn't say raw sensation. I mean, you could say raw sensation. Maybe I even wrote raw sensation in the, but it's even to say sensation is still is still to kind of imagine that there's a thing, so it objectifies it. Whereas really it's there's a lot this living happening, which is feeling. So that's why I prefer, and I might have written it in that way in the essay, but I generally prefer to say feeling because feeling, even though many of us think of feeling as a an object, it at least suggests more of this alive happening. It's something that's occurring rather than an object. Somebody says maybe our issues seem so deep that we can't possibly put it in a question. Can you repeat the solution? How to feel the unwanted feelings without being so distracted and having resistance take us out. Well, um, as I said, it's a very subtle thing that I shared today. So if you find it inaccessible, my recommendation would be consider starting with the breath awareness practice as I share in the self-awareness course, and or the active relaxation method that I share. I think both of them are very helpful. And so working with both of them, maybe if you're new to them, then just start one and work with that consistently for several weeks and then consider possibly adding the other one as well um and just see how that maybe helps you to start to have a subtler awareness of yourself and your direct experience. When you're when you have that subtler awareness of your direct experience, um, then what I'm proposing today is just noticing the that there is this alive happening of feeling, which is before any thoughts about it, before any labels about it, before any stories about it. And it doesn't need to be solved. It doesn't need to be understood. You don't need to have a handle on it. You don't need to have, uh, to do anything with it other than just to allow, just allow. And so the one of the ways in I would say two ways, and maybe it's two sides of the same coin, that we have often learned to suppress that is through giving our attention to the thoughts and through armoring or a hardness, which can be felt physically, but also at a more energetic level. So it can be very, very subtle just to notice this armoring, this gripping, this uh, hardness. And so this, what I'm proposing here today is just to uh, allow, allow if there are thoughts, allow the thoughts. Don't try to fight with the thoughts, but just notice the feeling that's prior to the thoughts. So part of the challenge for many of us is that we're so accustomed to thinking about the feeling rather than just feeling that we want to label it. We want to understand it. We want to have a story about it. We want to be able to do something about it. So we don't just feel, instead we think about it. Oh, I feel angry. Oh, it's because of this. Oh, if I could only do these things, then I would finally be better. I can't believe that that happened. Oh, it sucks. So we think about it, but what I'm proposing is just allow the pure feeling, which is doesn't require any thinking, doesn't require any story, doesn't require any thought about it whatsoever. And so so that, and then also noticing how you might have a tendency to try and ref unconsciously, reflexively shut it down or protect yourself from feeling through armoring or hardness, and just to allow for a softness. So again, if that seems too subtle to be accessible or workable, then my recommendation would be start with breath awareness and or um, the active relaxation method. So breath awareness, I have that free course at my website, which you can get access to. And I've got a guided audio and everything in that, so that should hopefully be quite accessible. And then the active relaxation method, I have some videos on YouTube, but I don't know that they're called, I don't know that any of them are called the active relaxation method. There may be one. If you search for active relaxation on my channel and you can't find it, you can email me and I can send you a link to the video that has it. Somebody here says, I have a persistent fear of EMF and radiation exposure, and I feel like it's affecting my mood and overall quality of life. I'd really appreciate your thoughts on this. Um, so, okay, so in theory, uh, not, in theory, nothing, uh, really ever touches you. I mean, in, in truth, nothing touches you. Um, but at that level, you are not a body. You are not a mind. You are not a thing. You are not any substance or thing that can be touched or harmed, created or destroyed. So then with that awareness of yourself, there's no, there's no fear because there's nothing, there's no possibility of any harm. But most of us are not functioning from that level of consciousness most of the time. We maybe have glimpses of it, maybe sustained glimpses for a second or a minute or an hour or a day or a week or whatever. But usually for most of us, that's not uh, it's not our constant state. I mean, in fact, pretty sure it's safe to say that nobody who's here live or who would ever watch this video would be a person who's in that state constantly, because why on earth would they why on earth would they watch this video? Um, so so then if you're identified as the body, or to the degree that you're identified with the body, then in theory, it's still possible to be unaffected by things. However, in practice, we each have to uh, determine what's our highest priority, because due to our conditioning, we're going to uh, have reactions to certain things. I mean, you know, so if you take a very accomplished yogi and you bury him underground, I say him, you know, him, her, whoever, underground, uh, and keep them there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, and then you could revive. You could dig them back up, and they would be could be revived, and uh, that's a possibility. But for most of us, if that happened, that would be the end. We'd exit the body, and then when they dig up the body would have decayed. So the so do you want do you want to become, is it important for you to be an advanced yogi? If so, then you have that clarity. But if not, then it can be useful just to recognize what things, um, what's really what's what. Are you actually having reactions? Or like, because the person who asked this, I think you live in a big city or near a big city, so there's significant amounts of man-made EMF. Uh, so do you actually have reactions? If you do, then that would be one case. If you don't, then that's a different case. Because if you don't have reactions, then then and you have fear, then that's much easier. I think that's much easier, clearer scenario. If you do have reactions, that's a different scenario, and then I'd have to ask you further clarifying questions to be able to give you a more useful answer to that. But if you don't have reactions, then um, then my recommendation would be work with the ask framework. So yeah, you know what that is. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, you can also get that's also included as a bonus in the self-awareness course. But that'd be my main recommendation. If you are having reactions, then you can let me know and I can give you other recommendations. Okay, so somebody says, would you be open to elaborating upon ways to eliciting and sustaining the allowing of feeling and how to identify where/what context it would be helpful? Uh, well, feeling is always happening. Or I guess I should say that capacity is always there, and there's always something. It would always be appropriate for feeling to be happening in an uninhibited, unencumbered way, because it's a natural function and part of the uh, how the entity or the organism uh, functions in an optimal way. So if you're so uh, so it's not necessary to elicit anything or sustain anything, rather uh, just a willingness to soften. And what would bring that about would be the clarity of the benefit, or at least the potential benefit of it. And so that's why I suggested if you can recognize that there are things in your life that you've been trying to solve, so-called problems that you've been trying to solve, that you have not been able to solve despite trying, bringing to bear everything that you have known up to now, then, and especially if you can recognize that trying to solve that so-called problem has actually made things worse, then that's a really good candidate for uh, reminding yourself of the potential benefit of feeling instead of the way that you've been trying to do things. This person goes on to say, I intuit this lesson would be useful to me, but unsure how to apply it skillfully because the mind says I am feeling, and in the body, the sensation of allowing more feeling feels like intensifying feeling with focused attention/subtle effort/tension. Uh-huh. So, uh, Yeah, it's not about uh it's not about intensifying anything, although you may experience a sense of intensification, but not necessarily and not probably not all the time. Um, but it could happen that there could be a from time to time an experience of intensification, but I wouldn't say that that would be something to aim for or a way to measure whether you're doing it successfully or not. So the main thing from my perspective is what I shared about softness. So uh, I guess here would be some guidelines for how you might uh, determine if and when this could be useful and then how to approach that. So the question would so this the criteria would be, are you experiencing some level of distress? So distress being a generic catch-all for uh, sense of uh, 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 threat, unhappiness, frustration, or it could be more extreme. It could be depression, anger, uh, fear, anxiety. But if there's some distress, that would be criteria one. Second criteria would be, is there any uh, do you have a high degree of confidence that uh, you can resolve the distress through your uh, habitual means? If so, then just use your habitual means. But if you have low confidence in being able to have success in that approach, um, uh, then you would have met the two preliminary criteria that would let you know that applying this approach is likely to be helpful. So then, how would you do that? And that would be just notice that prior to the thinking about it, prior to the labeling of it, prior to the stories about it, there's this occurring, this happening of feeling. So you don't know anything about it. You don't know what it is. You don't know what it's called because it's prior to the thinking. And just notice if there's any armoring or hardness that you could just allow for more softness. Obviously, not with force, that would be counterproductive, but just gently. And it doesn't have to be a lot. And there's no demand for any success whatsoever. I mean, if the answer is no, I can't soften, that's okay. If it's 1% softening, great. 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever. I mean, there's no standard that you have to meet in this regard. It's just a intention and and then just to stay with that intention for as long as you desire or seems reasonably interesting or useful, and not to push into excessive discomfort. Minor discomfort is okay, but not something to sustain. It's not like, okay, I'm just going to try to sustain mild discomfort forever. It's more like if there's some mild discomfort, that's okay. and uh, just bring some curiosity and see what happens. What my experience is that it usually, if it's mild discomfort, then typically that transforms into more uh, ease, even maybe some, yeah, let's say openness, maybe even a mild, uh, maybe just say pleasant experience. There's no requirement for what should happen, but I'm just pointing out I wouldn't recommend trying to. There's no particular virtue in discomfort. It's not like mild discomfort is good and you should sustain mild discomfort because that's going to benefit you. I'm just saying if there is mild discomfort, that's fine. Don't don't aim for to push beyond that, and don't aim to sustain discomfort. But if there is some mild discomfort, don't freak out about it either. Yeah. Somebody says you can't think your way out of this. I think that's the name of the Substack essay. Okay, somebody here says, I've noticed that I've had a pattern over the years of getting into relationships where the start is very passionate and intense, but they also tend to be very fleeting as they can burn slash fizzle out quickly. Been putting my attention on learning how to sustain a relationship in a gentler and healthier way, but this is a fairly new revelation, and I'm still not entirely sure why this happens. It happens almost certainly because of your conditioning. So you were conditioned uh, to uh, uh, believe or perceive that this kind of intensity is what will uh, make you safe. And uh, when that when that intensity is not there, then you feel insecure. And so that pattern would just keep repeating because you're trying to avoid the insecurity. And so the uh, to change that would be to find and to really cultivate that sense of safety within yourself. Um, I I I did just send out some emails last week about the book this new book that I'm working on that's a collaborative process for anybody who wants to participate in that, which sounds like that could be really applicable here. Um, if you know if that seems like a good fit, you could go back through the emails and find it. But in general, the everything that I talked about here today would be useful. But again, if it's too subtle, then I would recommend starting with something like breath awareness or the active relaxation method. Um, the some people find personally, it doesn't really do anything for me that I'm personally aware of. But I've gotten enough feedback from enough people that they find that the soothing uh, touch is helpful in the so there's a formalized version of this which is called havening, Havening, um, and the basics, three basic movements they use in havening. They do the face. I mean, technically, it's supposed to just be the cheeks because they say that that's where the most feedback happens, but a lot of people find doing the whole face and even the throat, even for some people, even doing the scalp and down the back of the neck can be helpful. It's just very gentle. Uh, the second one is the arms. So they just stroke gently down the arms. And then the third one is the palms, just gently rubbing the palms together. You could try those and see how that works for you. Um, but the point is any things that will offer that will bring you really to notice what's presently happening as it is, instead of your anxious thoughts about it. So even if you're not conscious of the thoughts, they're anxious thoughts about, well, anxious things. So, but they're not. Those thoughts are your nervous system is making connections between those thoughts and some trigger or triggers in your present experience, but there's actually not any real connection. It's an association that your mind has made. And the habit is to stay spinning in the thoughts and not, and that maintains that association. So it just keeps getting triggered and triggered and triggered and triggered, and your behavior will follow a predictable pattern. So instead, and that's all looking for security or safety through external things. So the narratives are, when I have this, when I can get this, when I can secure this, then I'll be safe. Then I can be at ease. Then I can be happy. But then there's always fear, anxiety that, oh, I might lose it. I am losing it. I can't control it. Bad things might happen. Or in your case, maybe more specifically, oh, this isn't exciting anymore. This isn't passionate anymore. So then that feeds back, oh, I'm not safe. Maybe I don't know the specifics for you. I guess I could speculate for a lot of people that would trigger it's like, oh, I'm not needed or desired or valued enough. The passion, the that intensity signals, oh, I'm so important, I'm needed, I'm wanted. And when that's not there, then there's this triggering of insecurity. Oh no, now I'm not wanted and I'm not needed. I'm not that desired. Uh, but that's just an association out of habit from childhood, almost certainly. And so, um, instead, establishing that safety unconditionally and internally, which is a process, is not something that's likely to happen instantly overnight or anything like that, but it's something that you can practice. And as you do that, then that will allow you to start to release those associations. So then opens up new possibilities for you that were not really so present or obvious to you. And you'll just start to notice that that happens naturally. So that would be my recommendation would be to work to establish that internal sense of safety that is unconditional. So it's not dependent on how other people are behaving or uh, what your hormones are doing or any of those things. So somebody says, can you give an example of this? I'm not sure what this is. If you still want an example, you'll have to let me know. Um, and that person says, this is hard at the start, but it gets easier, right? Well, uh, probably. I mean, in general, it's true of any in learning. I mean, so this is just learning. So when something is unfamiliar or unknown, then we usually equate that as hard. It's not hard, it's just unknown. But that's usually how we process that is we say, oh, this is hard. Um, but it starts out unfamiliar, unknown, and therefore we say it's hard. As you uh the more you learn, the more familiar it becomes, and therefore we equate that as it's easier. Um, it's not really any easier or harder. It's exactly what it is, but the perception of it changes, yes, due to familiarity. So, again, that's just true of any kind of learning. All right, got through all of them. I guess that's all for today. Thanks to all of you. Blessings to all. Take care. Bye for now.